The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is regarded as not only one of the best Zelda games in the series, but one of the best games of all time. This was the first foray into 3D for the Legend of Zelda series and is widely regarded as a huge success. Well, today, I want to take a closer look at the development secrets behind one of the best games of all time, and peek behind the curtain of the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Well, if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content, and also turn on notifications to never miss an update, plus stick around to the end of the video to get an exclusive offer for channel members. Okay, without any further delay, let's dive into the development secrets of the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and first of all, we've got the design goals. So before development began, the Nintendo team agreed they wanted Ocarina of Time to be unique and not comparable to any other game. The team wrote down ideas on bits of paper, they wrote down what they wanted to do in 3D, and then the bits of paper were stuck up on the wall, and the directors of the game, they would then walk around and browse and pick out the ideas they thought were the best, and also would represent the Legend of Zelda best in 3D. Apparently they were also drawn to ideas that seemed impossible at the time, knowing that no other developer had done something similar. Well, next up we got seamless transitions. So one of the main goals was to seamlessly transition from combat into exploration. So without that seamless transition from combat into exploration, IG Aonuma explained this was the key feature of the game. Without it, the game was much less likely to succeed. So given there wasn't anything out there like Ocarina of Time at the time of development, developers had to rely on their recent experiences, including developing Super Mario 64 and also the lesser known Star Fox 64. Well, next up we got first person. So Shigeru Miyamoto proposed the game should be in first person rather than the third person, which we'd seen in all of the previous 4 Zelda games across the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and also the Game Boy as well. Miyamoto had a few reasons for this. He wanted the player to enjoy and be immersed in the environment, plus also more resources could be focused on the enemies, the dungeons, and the environments. So one of the main drawbacks of first person in Ocarina of Time came down to the story, with Link travelling through time. So you've got Child Link and Adult Link. If you could only see through Link's eyes, it'd be very difficult to tell if Link was a child or was an adult, so ultimately Nintendo settled on the traditional third-person view for Link. Well, next up we got the format. So development started in late 1994, during the time when Nintendo was developing Super Mario 64. The public got its first look at the game at Space World in December 1995, however the game looked very different from what we know Ocarina of Time to be today. Nintendo finally released the game on N64 via a cartridge format, but it was originally planned to be released on the Nintendo 64 disk drive, or N64 Double D system, and after it released, Nintendo confirmed it was the biggest game they had ever released on a cartridge regarding megabytes. And after the game released, Nintendo did confirm it was the biggest game they had released ever to date via a cartridge. Well, next up we got name change. So during development the game was simply called Zelda 64. The game looked very different to the final version, the environments weren't very detailed at all, the characters, they really lacked personality, but this is to be expected from a game in development, and it also would be in development for 3 more years. Well, next up we got a big one. So this is Z targeting. So the Z targeting combat system was completely new for Ocarina of Time. The team built on their experience in Super Mario 64. It was harder to jump on enemies in a 3D environment compared to the 2D Super Mario games. The targeting system was born out of the need to focus on an enemy and circle them, planning for an attack, and the Z targeting system was born and became central to the combat system in Ocarina of Time. Targeting is done by pressing the Z trigger on the Nintendo 64 controller. That allows Link to lock on to an enemy, a character, or an object in the game world, and this allowed Link to lock on to an enemy, a character, or an object in the game world. So this was a massively helpful feature, given if this didn't exist, you'd have to position Link and the camera facing your target, which constantly moves in a 3D space. So with the Z targeting, you can keep focus on your target while you move with Link, and that allows for much more engaging combat. This was invented by Yoshiaki Koizumi of Super Mario Sunshine and also Super Mario Galaxy fame. So here's Miyamoto talking about the combat from the game from a 1999 developer interview, and Miyamoto says, "The sword combat in Ocarina didn't turn out as well as I'd hoped, unfortunately. I'm pretty bad at action games myself, so I wanted Ocarina to have a system with depth, something you could steadily improve and the more that you played, although the game didn't need to be as complex as something like Tekken. At the same time, however, part of me wanted the action to be easier than Mario 64. There were people who told us I couldn't get past the later stages in Mario 64, and I felt we needed to make sure Ocarina could be finished by them, otherwise it wouldn't be a proper Zelda game. So about a year into development, I realised if we leaned too heavily into the sword combat, it would definitely end up being more difficult than Mario 64, so we pulled back and eased into the simpler system that we have today." Well, next up we got 3D challenges. So the move from 2D to 3D wasn't simple for the team at Nintendo, as new challenges would appear, such as perspective and also constructing the environments. In 2D games, the distance of an object is very clear, however, in early 3D titles, this sense of perspective is lost. So this was one of the toughest challenges the Ocarina of Time team had to overcome early in development, and another difficult challenge in 3D is creating environments like the dungeons, the forest, the lakes, and also the deserts as well. Dungeon designer Eiji Onozuka described the challenge related to creating dungeons because Link would clip through walls due to his moveset. Link had some really good new moves, including little hops to the left and the right, and also the backflip when he was locked onto enemies, and Link would often clip through walls with his hookshot, and also there would be a team of mappers whose job it was to prevent Link from losing his place in the environment. The character designers would come up with something new for Link to do, and the mappers, they would have to redo all of their work. Well, next up we got time travel, cause and effect. So Eiji Onuma wanted time travel included so they could do something as child Link and then feel the effects as adult Link. Nintendo felt this was a very interesting gameplay mechanic, plus it also revisits an idea from the original Legend of Zelda, but at the time the team were restricted by hardware limitations. Now the hardware was getting more sophisticated, so could the gameplay mechanics. Well, next up we got the Ocarina. So the Ocarina and other musical instruments, they'd been included in previous Zelda games. However, the Ocarina of Time was the first time players could play the instrument with the buttons on the controller, and this idea was spearheaded by Shigeru Miyamoto himself. The developers knew they wanted to make music central to the game, so the team decided to do this through the Ocarina. The Ocarina is a multifaceted item, so you can play a song and different things happen based on the notes in the songs. For example, you can interact with the royal family crest, you can change the weather, or you can shine light in dark places. And Eiji Onuma said it was a challenge for the composer Koji Kondo to come up with these very simple note songs. Well, next up we got the day and night cycle challenge. So one of Miyamoto's design goals was to wow players when they exited Kokiri Forest for the first time. Seeing that large expanse of Hyrule Field before them, Eiji Onuma always says this is his favourite part of the game. Seeing Hyrule Field and hearing that soaring music, you know your adventure has begun. Well, at the start, Hyrule Field was terribly uninteresting. There wasn't really much to do, so the designers added wind and temperature, and the time of day is also much more apparent when you're in Hyrule Field. So getting the sun to rise and then set, followed by the moon, that was a really tough challenge for the developers. There was a new feature on the Nintendo 64, and that was the ability to create fog. Nintendo took advantage of it to create a more atmospheric experience. The morning has a lot more fog, and then gradually as the day goes by, the fog goes away. Well, next up we got Link. So the adult and child versions of Link were programmed with the same animations. The team would also observe real-life sword battles at the Uzumasa movie studio in Japan to help them with their animation tasks. And Link has around 1,000 different animations. Well, next we've got 3 years to open a chest, so Miyamoto described how the team debated for 3 years on the chest opening animation. Miyamoto himself came into work one day with an actual chest, a sword and a shield, and the team finally decided upon the kick to open the chest. The idea of using motion capture did come up with the team, however many at Nintendo were against it, even though eventually they needed to use some motion capture to achieve their goals. Well, next up we got Epona, so IG Onuma and IG Onozuka both said they included the horse in the game because Miyamoto really liked horses and wanted to include one for Link. At the time there weren't many other games where the main hero could ride a horse, so it was an idea that stood out to Miyamoto. Originally, Miyamoto debated whether to use the Pegasus boots from A Link to the Past as transport, but ultimately it was decided the horse would be much better, given it was new, and it would also add a new dimension of interactivity and fun to the game. Miyamoto would go to riding clubs himself and they would give him pictures of horses. He'd bring them back to the team so they could accurately reflect the horse in Ocarina of Time. Creating Epona in-game was a huge challenge for the developers, and often Epona would run into trees on Hyrule Field, therefore many of the trees were taken out to avoid this issue, which is why we see Hyrule Field looking fairly empty today. Well, finally we've got Navi, and specifically I want to go into how Miyamoto feels about Navi. It's widely reported how all of us feel about Navi. She can be a little bit annoying with her unsolicited advice, but how does Miyamoto feel? So here he is once again talking from that Japanese strategy guide interview in 1999, and Miyamoto says, "I think the way that we give hints is still a little too unfriendly. Speaking plainly, I can confess to you now, I think the whole system with Navi giving you advice is the biggest weak point in Ocarina of Time. It's incredibly difficult to design a system that gives proper advice that is tailored to the player's situation. To do it right, you have to spend the same amount of time as you would developing an entire game, and I was very worried we'd be digging ourselves into a hole if we pursued perfection there. If you read Navi's text, she says the same things over and over. I know it makes it sound bad, but we purposely left her at a kind of stupid level. I think if we tried to make Navi's hints more sophisticated, that stupidity would have actually stood out even more. And the truth is, I wanted to remove the entire system, and that would have been even more unfriendly to players, so you can think of Navi as being there for players who stopped playing a month or so ago, who want to pick up the game and want to remember what they're supposed to do." Miyamoto laughs, and then he says, "It's a brazen excuse, I know." Otherwise, we tried to make the hints friendly for the players, but I heard many people saying they couldn't solve them without a strategy guide. When we took a closer look though, we found that in the sections that people needed hints, but they vary from person to person. There's no consistency, and that can't be helped though in a game like Zelda, which combines action and also puzzle solving. Well, let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know if you've got any development secrets from the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Well, that is it for this video today, and as always, thank you so much for watching or for listening. Don't forget you can hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content here on Triforce Times. And you can also like the video and share the video too. That would help me out here on the channel. Well, thanks again. I'll see you soon. Well, this video is brought to you by Triforce Times Backstage. This is available through Patreon or YouTube membership, and you're going to get exclusive benefits, plus you'll be able to go above and beyond to support Triforce Times. Free content is core to Triforce Times, and you can continue to enjoy these videos that you know and love. However, if you want to enjoy the benefits like early access, our community Discord, shoutouts in the credits of videos, content polls and exclusive videos, then select the tier that is right for you and join Triforce Times Backstage today. So help me make Triforce Times be even bigger and better, plus you're going to get some added benefits for a small fee every month. Well, thank you for listening, and now it is time to go back to the video.